Hello, hello, hello. My name is Robert. I am the recovery guy, and you have entered into The Fix.
My name is Robert, recovered alcoholic. Sobriety date is April 25th, 1986. And I've been sober a long time. I think it's like, Billy, I think it's 14,392 days. And you know what? And people say that, and you know what? I'm counting. You're damn right I'm counting. Do you remember when we drank and we used, this is Alcoholics Anonymous, so we'll talk about alcohol. Although so many of our stories involve drugs, this is Alcoholics Anonymous. Every day was the longest day of our life. Do you remember that? Drinking was work. It was much harder than any job I ever had, because not only did I have to drink, but I had to drink without you knowing how drunk I was. And I had to be a different person when I went home to my wife. I had to be a different person at work. I had to be a different person around my parents, around friends. I had to be different no matter where I went, because I couldn't let you see me. Drinking, remember how hard drinking was? So every 24-hour day was like 48 hours. Now every 24-hour day is like, maybe it's because I'm old and I can't remember half the day, but every day seems like 10 hours. The days just go by. Yeah. And if I could take credit for this, I would. But because of great sponsorship, the Rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, countless opportunities I've had to go into jails and institutions and prisons, and a loving God as He would represent Himself in my life, I haven't found it necessary to drink or use since April 25th, 1986, and for that I owe AA my life. Because without Alcoholics Anonymous, I wouldn't be here. You know, and one of the things I really appreciate about Billy, Billy will be sober 41 years this coming Monday, and let's give him a round of applause for that. And I could sit and listen to Billy all night, because Billy got sober on the East Coast. I got sober in Las Vegas. So many East Coasters moved to Las Vegas to retire. And so what he was talking to you tonight is what I was spoon-fed on when I first came into the Rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. We didn't care. Back in those days, back in 1986, and when Billy got sober, we didn't care how you felt. Mary knows. Mary's been sober a long ass time, decades, and we didn't care how you felt. You know, she's not decades old. She's just been sober decades, and we didn't care how you felt. If we hurt your feelings and you lived, it was okay that we hurt your feelings. Because if I was to ask you how much, let's say you were drowning in the ocean, how much do you have to like the guy throwing you the life preserver? Do you really have to like them? Or you just have to be grateful that a life preserver showed up, and because you clung to that, you won't drown? That's what AA was like to me. And I didn't even know I was an alcoholic. I was so grateful to find out I was an alcoholic, because now I had a solution. So much of what Billy was reading tonight from the doctor's opinion, it said this very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, he despaired over solving any of them, now finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only requirement necessary is to follow a few simple rules. And I just wanted to know what the rules were. Just tell me what the rules are, because the rules out there are killing me. I couldn't hold a job. You know, when you're 32 years old and no one will hire you, and you're on the street and you're bumming nickels to get $1 because $1 would buy you a drink. You know, back in those days it would. And yet, you don't think you have a problem with alcohol. If you're in the Wasatch Crest Treatment Center, you probably have a problem. I'm just spitballing right now. I probably think you have a problem. If you're at this meeting and you're not monitoring the class for a college credit, you're probably alcoholic. Doesn't make me smart, it just the conclusion I came to. And if we don't know what we are, if we're not diagnosed, that's why in the big book it says, I can't tell you you're alcoholic, you have to diagnose yourself. If you're not sure you're an alcoholic, go try some controlled drinking, see how that works for you. You know, when Billy read tonight, follow a few simple rules, you know, our book is meant to be suggested, only we realize we only know a little. Here are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. Throw that word suggestion right out the window. Because the only alternative suggestion is go try to drink. Don't just do it once. Try it over and over again and see if you get a different result. You might not come back. The scariest part of relapse, and every one of us who have relapsed after a period of sobriety will tell you the same thing. Things get worse, never better. They never get better. If they got better, do you think I'd end up back in Alcoholics Anonymous? Hell no. I would learn how to drink like a gentleman, which means you would have to take your hat off to me. But I tried every imaginable way. Indulge me or not. I don't care because it's my time. I'm going to be sober whether or not you're sober. I want you to be sober tomorrow, but my sobriety doesn't hinge on you being sober. And that sounds harsh. That's just the way it is. If you've tried any of these 18 things, you may be an alcoholic. Here are some of the methods we have tried. Drinking beer only. Anybody do that? Limiting the number of drinks. Never drinking alone. Never drinking in the morning. Drinking only at home. Never drinking in the house. Never drinking during business hours. Drinking only at parties. Switching from scotch to brandy. Drinking only natural wines. Agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job. Taking a trip. Not taking a trip. Swearing out forever with or without a solemn oath. Taking more physical exercise. Reading inspirational books. Going to health farms and sanitariums. Accepting voluntary commitment to asylum. We can increase the list ad infinitum. If you've done 3 of those, you're likely alcoholic. You know, when Billy read tonight, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Don't get it twisted. We don't beg you for us. It may seem that way. We beg you for you because we don't want you to experience the next bottom that awaits you. Because if we don't think that alcoholism is a progressive disease over any considerable period, things get worse, never better. As the incredible Father Martin says, we don't start drinking as if we never drank before. We pick up where we would have been had we never stopped drinking, which is a scary thought. That should scare those of us who've been around for a minute. It should scare us to death. Can you imagine? That's why most people with time who go back out, within, one night they're taking a drink, the next night they're taking 2 drinks, the next night they're on a pint, the next night they're on a quart, the next night they're on a half gallon, and the next week you read about them in the obituary. That's how quickly, because we're trying to make up for lost time. We're trying to recapture that feeling, I say, of being an almost. Now, I'm pretty correct because I think I have my finger on the pulse of addiction. I think most of us start drinking anywhere between 13 and 15 years old. And many of us began to drink because we could get away with it. It was something we could do that defied those in charge. And we drank the first time essentially because we could get away with it. It was what the big people did. Most of us drank the second time because of how it made us feel the first time. Remember that feeling of thinking you were okay? Remember that feeling of thinking, it may not be good here, it may not be good there, but right here, right now, in this moment, I'm content. I don't want to kill myself. I don't think I'm too good. I'm just okay right here, right now. And that's where alcohol and drugs would take us, into a place of being what I call an almost. Because when you come from nothing and you are nothing and you're always going to be a nothing, being an almost is everything. And we spend our years trying to chase being an almost. When we're sober, we're nothing. When we drink, we're an almost. But that only lasts for a while. Because as F. Scott Fitzgerald would say, first a man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man. And you can look at your drinking career, and I want you to self-examine, as I have done with me. Look at our drinking career and realize when you started drinking. When you were starting to be removed from the equation of whether or not you drank. It was pretty much determined. For me, it was 18. Check this out. You don't think I'm insane, right? I need to be restored to sanity. I was 18 years old, January 3rd of 1972. I walked into the registrar's office at high school and held up my license and said, I'm dropping out of school. It was January. I could have not shown up and graduated in May. But they said, you can't drop out of high school. I said, I can do whatever I want. I'm 18 years old. I was so tired of having others make decisions for me. Even though decisions I was making for myself were causing me to be destroyed as a person, I would never be what I wanted to be to whoever I wanted to be that to, but I could drink. And looking back at it, as I would see the unmanageability of my life, I would see where alcohol began to remove me from the equation. And I began to drink because I had to recapture that feeling. And the mental obsession turned into a physical allergy, or the physical allergy was exposed. That by the time I was 26 years old, I was gone. I could no longer hold a job. I could no longer have a marriage. Family members were asking me not to come over anymore. My life was beginning to crumble one domino at a time. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Mm-hmm. Because our stories, they're parallel. They're very similar. You know, we might have drank in different places. We might have drank different things. We might have used different things. Some people may have been addicted to different substances. It doesn't matter. We drank and used for the same reason, because we didn't like who we were. And while we were drunk, while we were high, and this is the only thing I'll say about drugs. I used to do so much crystal meth. Check it out. Check it out. This is the only time I'll talk about drugs. Like, people who cook meth, they're the worst people on the planet, because they will steal your money and then help you look for it. They're that bad. And so I used to hang out with these people who cooked, and they asked me not to come around anymore because I snorted and I smoked too much. And that should be funny. And because that's still humorous to me. Because I did everything alcoholically. My middle name is Moore. It really is. And I just had to switch what the more was. Because there was not enough of anything that could alter my condition to make me feel like an almost. That was too much. I was willing to sacrifice anything to get that feeling. And when we do that to people who legitimately love us, something's very, very wrong. And my bottom came. Did you ever hear voices? Some are real and some are imagined. Yes. The imagined ones are psychosis. The real ones are individuals in our life who are wondering what we're doing. And the voices in my head were like, in Utah, it's pretty synonymous. It's what I call them the Tabernacle Choir. And they were saying, Bobby, 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 what are you doing? Because I had family members who looked at me and said, why are you doing this? Don't you know that you're asking us to ask you not to come around anymore? Don't you know that you've left your wife? Don't you know you've walked out on your children? Don't you know? I had employers who looked at me and said, you're the greatest when you're sober. But you're now a liability to me. You're no longer an asset, and I have to let you go. And we're willing to do that and to justify that. And we're caught in a trap that can't be sprung. And I remember standing in front of the mirror on February 9th of 1986. And Billy, you know what got me? I was going to die. That was the only thing that stopped me from going down the path I was going on. Because I had lost everything. You know, when you talk about surrender what? There's nothing left to surrender. There's nothing left of my life. I'm nobody. But the only thing that scared me was I was 32 years old and I was going to die, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was like a runaway train with no brakes. Whatever I crashed into would be destroyed. And that morning when I looked in the mirror, there were no voices anymore. No one was asking me what I was doing. All the voices were gone. And at that point I realized if something didn't change, I was going to die, physically die. And that was what scared me into treatment. And it was interesting because I grew up in LA and I knew what a wino, a Skid Row bum looked like. They pushed a shopping cart, they drank cheap wine, and they just walked around town. And because I gauged my insides by someone else's outside, I never would admit I was alcoholic. But that particular morning on February 9th of 1986, I would look in the yellow pages under alcoholism. I wasn't ready to admit I was alcoholic, but that's where I looked, under alcoholism. And I started making phone calls. And I talked to people and they'd say, do you have a job? No. Do you have any money? Nope. Do you have insurance? Nope. Click. And this went on to a number of treatment centers. Finally, I found the Nevada Treatment Center on Martin Luther King Boulevard in Las Vegas. They said to me, if you have $50 and you can be here in a half hour, we'll talk to you. So I called my dad, who had been sober a number of years prior to that, and I called him up, and I didn't know where my car was, and I wasn't legal to drive anyway at this time. And it's funny how the state of Nevada would hold that against me, tickets and non-appearances. I still have resentment toward them, I think. And I called my dad up, and I'd lost $1,000 the previous night at a place called Davies Locker on Desert Inn Boulevard, right off of Maryland Parkway. It's a real swanky place. You could tell by that time I was in dives, although they all looked like, Caesar's Palace. But you could drink for free, as long as you're willing to lose all your money. Figure that one out. That made sense. And so I spent the evening there, and I had no money. I was coming off of a binge, and I was in my parents' house, and they didn't know I was there. My mom was already at work, my dad was at work, and I called my dad up and said, Dad, if you can get here in a half hour and loan me $50, he knew loan meant give, and I'll go into a treatment center, they'll talk to me. And that began my journey into recovery. They were smart enough to know that what I needed was Alcoholics Anonymous. I could detox because, the difference between a heroin addict and an alcoholic is a heroin addict will think they're going to die from withdrawals, but they won't die. An alcoholic actually will. And so they would medically detox you off of alcohol to make sure you wouldn't go into delirium tremors, to make sure you wouldn't die in a seizure. And so they had doctors on staff there. And I went into there, and after they knew I was medically cleared, they took me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was interesting because you sounded just like me in stories that you would tell of your drinking and using. But you had jobs, you had this thing called a relationship, you had a driver's license, your car wasn't being repossessed. I mean, you were fine people, as much as I could tell, unless you were lying. And some of them maybe were, I don't know. But I thought, how could these people be me? And I kept coming back, and I kept coming back. I kept hearing the stories of how they were transformed by following a few simple rules. And I decided that I could do that. So I started mimicking you. I thought, you said keep coming back, but you said that only because you didn't know who I was. If you really knew who I was, you would tell me to go get some professional help and then come back. And yet, there was this thing called honesty. And I couldn't get over being honest. I could say I admitted I was powerless over alcohol and my life had become a man as well. I could say that, but I couldn't concede to my innermost self because that took a degree of being honest, which I wasn't ready to do. So instead of being honest with these group of people that I'd come to know and love, I decided to go back out. I made an active decision. This whole relapse thing, oops, shut up. Because nobody oopses. We decide we're not going to do something, so we do something different. And you can challenge me all you want, but in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. And I'll say this, we think it's a simple program for complicated people. You've heard that before if you've been around for a minute. The reality is it's a simple program for simple people who love to complicate things. That's more true. You ask me what time it is and I might just tell you how to build a watch. That's closer to the truth. It is a simple program. It's so simple that a guy like me could get it once I realized that there was no other place for me to go. So at 71 days, instead of being honest with those in the room, I made an active decision. Do I get honest or do I go drink? And as dangerous as a drink sounded, it wasn't quite as dangerous as being honest with you. And I chose to go drink. And I tried to recapture that feeling of being an almost. And I just couldn't. And I remember, I told you I drank at swanky places. If you're familiar with Las Vegas at all, there's this wonderful place called 50th and Fremont. And they had this fabulous hotel called the Rhett Butler Motel. And you paid by the week. It was that good. And my dad dropped me off there and he paid for a week. And I tried to recapture that feeling. And the more I drank, the more lonely I got. I got lonely for the men and women in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because up to that point, everyone I had ever met, the more you knew about me, the more you asked me not to come back. People in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, the more we know about you, the more we want you to come back, because the more we don't want you to suffer, the more you sound like us and we sound like you. Why not be us? Why not be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous? And so that's what I decided to be. After sitting in the room on April 25th, 1986, I thought, I can't drink anymore. And I don't want to kill myself. I decided I want to live. And the only place for me to go was back to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I went back to the late lunch bunch at a place called the Turning Point in Las Vegas. And I went in the back door because I was afraid that you would see me and you would know what I was doing. Because I thought I played a big game, but I was a liar. People who tell the truth can tell a liar a mile away. And so I tried to go in the back door when no one was there. And who showed up there? My sponsor was there. Of all freaking people, Max Brooks was there, as if he was waiting for me. And Max never went to this meeting. And here he was, an hour after the meeting was over, at a meeting he never went to. And Max didn't say, where you been, because he knew. He looked at me and said, are you ready? And I said, Max, I'm ready. I'll do anything, because the sense of loneliness I felt while I was drinking was more than the sense of loneliness I felt when I wasn't drinking. It was a whole paradigm shift for me. And at that moment, I conceded to my innermost self that I was alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery. On page 30, it will tell you that. And I said, Max, what do we do? And he said, get on your knees. We're going to do the third step prayer. And we did the third step prayer. And I said, now what do I do, Max? He said, everything I tell you to do. And I said, I can do that. And I haven't drank since. And what's great about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't know who's in treatment and who's not, but if you're here, make the most of it, because you may not be given another opportunity. You may not be given another chance. You may become the rule, not the exception. Because if you're in the room tonight and you're sober and you're clean, you're the exception. You're not the rule. Because for every one of us that's in there, there's probably 100 out there who will die from a treatable condition. How crazy is that? I was talking to Mary tonight, and that's what we died. We died from a treatable condition. It's not like we go to the oncologist and he says, you have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Go and enjoy yourself because you're going to be dead in 6 months. It's not like that at all. But see, the oncologist needs to tell me that I have cancer. We have to tell ourselves that we're alcoholic. I could tell Billy is an alcoholic all day long. And it's not going to encourage him to read the book, read the steps, go to meetings. He does that because that's what he wants to do. And that's what we have to do together. Because I'll tell you what, this is my AA opinion. And it's not to say that Alcoholics Anonymous is the only avenue to getting sober, because many people get sober and clean through other methods. And if you're on another method and you're staying clean and sober and you're happy, joyous, and free, that's all I want for you. But for me, Robert Pardon, the only thing that ever worked was the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had to get into the book. I had to get into the steps. I had to get into the path. You know, I was telling a friend earlier tonight, after in how it works, after it says A, B, and C, we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives, that B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, and C, that God couldn't, what if he sought. It said, being convinced, we are now at step 3. If you're not convinced, you're not done. Because I sponsor a lot of men, I have over the years. We can't convince you of anything. No one can surrender for you any more than all the people who love me. All their love in the world would not cause me to surrender. On page 30 of the big book, and I am a big book thumper, for which I make no apologies, most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to admit that he is bodily or mentally different from his fellows. I don't want to admit, only because I wasn't ready to admit that I was sick. Nothing's wrong with being sick. Now, granted, I did many bad things as a result of my sickness, not because I was bad, but because I'm sick. I have a phenomenon of craving. And I have to overcome that phenomenon of craving to surrendering to my alcoholism. And if I don't surrender in steps 1, 2, and 3, I'm never going to do steps 4 through 9, which means I'm never going to get well. And if I don't recover, I don't need steps 10, 11, and 12. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we have to do those steps in order, hopefully with another person. And that's one of the things I want to tell you and encourage you. My sponsor, Jack, would have 50 years if he was still living. He died in 2019. He was my sponsor for 32 years. Whether it's Jack or Billy or my friend Tom Sr. who celebrated 50 years, or Chuck C. who celebrated 53 years, men that I've known who have been sober a long ass time. I mean, I want to be them when I grow up. I want to live long enough to be them. And they haven't changed the program. So anything we suggest to you, and we're not telling you what to do, because there's a great joke. It says, you can tell an alcoholic, you just can't tell them much. Applause sign. There we go. You can laugh at that. That's okay. Because you can't tell us, because we're stubborn. We don't want to be told anything. That's why we can't pronounce you to be an alcoholic. You have to admit to your innermost self. You have to concede to your innermost self. Because nobody likes to admit. Matter of fact, Billy was just mentioned the 12 and 12. The 12 and 12 on the first step, Bill says we have to be ready. Who actually likes to admit complete defeat? Practically no one. And unless down on the bottom of that page it says, unless we're ready to admit entire humiliation, that sort of thing, our life, if any, will be precarious at best. The best we're going to be is precarious. That doesn't sound like the best. The best you can do is maybe you'll die from a treatable condition. So no person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove he can drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. Bill uses 3 words here. The first 100, obsession, illusion, and delusion. They're all the same thing. Obsession is I can't get enough of something that's really not there, because lack of power, that was my dilemma. I thought I had power over alcohol, but I really didn't. An illusion is something that is there, but I think it's something different. And the delusion is something that's not there, but I think it is. That's who we are. And unless I need to concede, unless I concede to my innermost self that I'm alcoholic, and if you haven't conceded, by God, concede. Because a friend of mine told me, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and the lights are out and nobody else is there. You know what the truth is. When you go to bed tonight and you lay up in your bunk, you know what the truth is about you. You know why you got here. You know you hope to stay here. You know why you relapse. You know everything about you. You know if you're honest with yourself, and we really are 3 o'clock in the morning and the lights are out, nobody else is there. That's the time we're vulnerable. We know what our condition is. We know. Why not just tell us what your condition is? Because only when we admit our faults to our fellows can we be like them. So it's for you. It's not for me. It's not for Yahweh. It's not for Scott. It's not for Mary. It's not for Rachel. It's for you. Why not be a part of something than be apart from something? And once we do steps 1, 2, and 3, we take on a new way of living. Thank God. You know, when I went to my dermatologist and I had a form of cancer, and he died, he said, you know what, let's do a biopsy of this thing. I don't like how it looks. And he said, yeah, you have melanoma cancer, and we need to dig down to the bone to get this thing out. I said, what happens if you don't get it? He said, well, you're probably going to die from melanoma. And he reminded me that it's treatable. If he goes and gets it, I'll probably be okay. You know what my next question was? When can you do it? It's with that eagerness, because unless we admit we're powerless over alcohol and we look at our life as being unmanageable, that our life, not and, they're not separate things. As a direct result of my drinking, my life had become unmanageable. Look at our lives. I mean, again, you're here. You know, if the judge is telling you you need to be here, you're not very manageable. The judge is managing your life. If your significant other is telling you if you don't get sober, you're not going to come back home. If CPS is telling you you're not going to get your kids back. If the doctor is telling you unless you stay sober, we're not going to give you that liver transplant. You're not making your life is unmanageable. Something else is managing your life. Don't you understand? That's what I had to understand. That's what we all have to understand. And according to step 1, I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I had to admit that I was insane before I could be restored. I mean, if I thought my life was manageable, then I'm not insane. If I'm not insane, I don't need step 2. And that's one of the problems with recovery in AA. We treat recovery like we treat a buffet. Do you ever go into a Chuck-A-Rama or a Sizzler? Right? I go to Chuck-A-Rama for their chicken. They have great fried chicken. But we go in there and we say, I want some of this, I want some of that. I'm staying away from the vegetable counter. I don't want desserts. I don't want this. I don't want that. We pick and choose what we want. Well, if we're in Chuck-A-Rama or Sizzler, our life doesn't depend upon it. Just our appetite for the rest of the day, maybe how we feel tomorrow. But if we do that with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, we're going to die. We're going to die from a treatable condition. So as I look at my life and I admitted that I'm powerless over alcohol, if I have power over alcohol, why can't I drink? Do you ever ask yourself that? I didn't ask myself that. I wasn't that smart. I wasn't ready to be honest. I thought it was somebody else who didn't understand me. Well, if you were brought up like me, if you had my life, but these were wonderful people. You know, and that's the thing. Many of us come from nice backgrounds. I didn't, but many of us do. Many of us come from single, we're the only child. Some of us come from middle child of 7 kids, Some of us come from a religious background. Some come from no religious background at all. Some come from a high religiosity where things are rammed down your throat. It says in the big book, we come from all sections of this life is represented, and many social, economic, and religious it says we are people who normally would not mix. We could go around this room right now and take an audit of each and every one of our lives, and it's like, what are you doing here? You're not from here. You're from Nebraska. You're from California. You're from Nevada. You're from South Dakota. What do you do? How'd you end up here? And we are people who normally would not mix. It says, but there exists amongst us a fellowship, a friendliness, and it talks about a camaraderie. It talks about people on a great liner when moment after rescue from shipwreck. And it doesn't really matter where we come from. We can come from the highest level where we never had to worry about money at all. We can come from no money at all. And when you're in the middle of the ocean and you're drowning, does that really matter? The only thing that matters is somebody going to come and save us, because right now we're drowning. And that's what we have an opportunity to experience when we come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. But that requires something. It says in the big book, but that itself would have not held us together as we are now joined. So at some point, the fellowship of the program, that feel good about liking me or me liking you, is not going to last that long. At some point, we need to incorporate the steps in our life. We have to follow a few simple rules for recovery to occur. And we have to do an inventory. We have to take a fearless and moral inventory of ourselves. Because if we don't, would you drink water from a 5-gallon bucket that had 3 ounces of cyanide in it? I wouldn't. And if you're honest with yourself, you wouldn't either. That is why we have to take the fearless and moral inventory. We have to admit to God. We already know. God already knows, because he can see in the dark, which is kind of freaky in the first place. At least for me. And we've known a long time. We have to admit to another person the exact nature of our wrongs. And then we have to be entirely ready. In my opinion, most people, outside of doing step 4, where we've taken really an inventory of ourselves, where we share it with someone else. We've already done steps 1 through 7, because we would do anything that God would remove the shortcomings. Remember those prayers? God, if you take this from me, this is what I'll do. But unfortunately, for many of us, we go back to doing what we were doing that got us in the jackpot in the first place. We have to do the steps. If we think, and if you can do it, you can do it. I'm not going to argue with you. I have too much other things to do than argue with you. You either take my word for it or you don't. If we think we can do this without the steps, then why haven't we? If we think that we can recover without guidance, then why haven't we? If we think we're the power that's greater than ourselves, then why hasn't that power given me the life that I now live? Right? If I cared about others, as in step 12, where I tried to carry the message, why do I always put you last? Right? If we could take an inventory of ourselves, and when we're wrong, promptly admit it, when we are wrong, not if we are wrong. It used to be if I'm wrong. Because you may be wrong. I may be right. My life has fallen apart and your life is fine, but, it's me we're talking about here. Again, you can tell an alcoholic, you just can't tell him much. But I need to submit myself to another person. I need to submit myself to meetings. I need to just submit myself. I need to become third if I'm ever going to become first. Somehow along the line, I get everything I wanted by giving you everything you ever wanted. Isn't that amazing? To have all the success I've had in my life, and I've had a lot of success, I've had a lot of failures, but I've had a lot of success. I just needed to teach you. I needed to be willing to share with you how to have success in your life. That's all I had to do. I needed to be willing to become third in order to become first. And as we look through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and Billy talked about the promises. If we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. Is there anyone in this room that doesn't want a new freedom and a new happiness? I mean, really? I've been sober over 39 years, and I want a new freedom. I want to wake up tomorrow and feel more free. I want a happiness I haven't. I want to wake up happier tomorrow than I did today. I mean, why settle for mediocrity when you can have everything? The hardest thing for me to do was relieve Billy and Rachel's tonight, because Rachel just pulled out a great pie out of the oven, and she said, "You can't have it now, you have to wait." I want that pie now, right? It's a very nice pie. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. Wow, to live there. Look at our past. Look at all the damage we've done. Wouldn't it be wonderful in your walk while you're still alive to not regret the past? We can't change it. The past is the past. I can't go back and undo the things that I've done, no matter how bad they are. I was telling a friend tonight the damage I've done to my oldest daughter. No matter how long I'm sober, she set a boundary, and that's as far as we're going to get. I did that. But I can't regret that any more than I can shut the door on it. But I can share it with my friend George. And I can say, I understand what loss is like. I understand when a loved one that you want so much to see how you've changed doesn't accept the change that's occurred in you. I can't regret that. Nor can I wish to shut the door on it. Because I never want to forget where I came from. Because if you forget your past, you'll relive it. And I don't relive my past as a 2x4 that I beat myself up with on a regular basis. But it's not a bad idea to remember where we came from. I'm never going to go back to 15th and Fremont. I'm never going to go back to wondering what it was like to not be in a good application. I'm never going to go back to not being employable. I'm never going to be an ex-husband again. My wife said she'll kill me in my sleep if that before that happens. She really said that. She's a Brooklyn Irish Catholic, to give you an idea of. She's 5'2", 105 pounds, and I'm deathly afraid of her. And so, but I never want to go back to being that person I was. I never want to leave the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I never want to forget the person who walked in the doors the first time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because what I have found, and I really mean this, if you do this, your life is going to be unbelievable. Some lights are going to be more amazing than others, but every one of your life is going to be amazing. Do you know why? You're not going to die from a treatable condition. You're going to go back and you're going to restore relationships. You know, on my desk in my office is a puzzle piece and a letter that I received from my first wife that I damaged greatly. And she gave it to me when I was 33 years sober, I think it was. And she was just saying wonderful things about me. Thank you for being the kind of man I always knew you could be. Thank you for having an impact in the life of our daughters. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And she's just talking to this person as if I haven't harmed her. And if there's anyone I've ever harmed, it's probably her the most. And yet, she found a way, and I looked at that, and I thought, wow, I'm so fortunate to have lived as long as I've lived, you know, to reinvent myself, to become the person I've always wanted to be, because alcohol no longer is part of my life. God has taken the place, God as I understand God. And you may have another understanding of God. One of the greatest things about Alcoholics Anonymous is some are Catholic, some are Protestant, some are agnostic. I had a friend of mine who said, the tide goes in and the tide goes out and I don't get drunk in between. That was pretty cool. And it's obvious his higher power was the moon and the tide. The moon and the ocean, because the moon controls the tide. And he said, can you stop the tide? I said, no. And he said, you can't stop my higher power either. And that was his way of saying that there's something out there in the universe that's operating greater than he is. And, you know, and I love Father Martin. If you think a coffee cup, because you'll hear this in the rooms, if you think a coffee cup can be your higher power, we need to talk. And here's why. Father Martin, outside of the fact that he's one of the most renowned priests in recovery, and I'm not even Catholic, and I think he's wonderful. I was probably Catholic in a different life. And Father Martin said, if your higher power could be a coffee cup, you've got a coffee cup at home. You don't need us. Wow, how cool is that? Because in actuality, I need you. I was so excited to come into town and speak at another event. The first phone call I made was to Billy, because I wanted to be a part of what he's doing, because we've become such dear friends. And I don't know many of you, most of you. I know a few of you in the room, but I do know you, because we suffer from the same affliction. That's alcoholism. And many of you, drug addiction as well. You know, by the time I got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous I lived 6 years in Las Vegas. And I tell people all the time that Las Vegas turned a fender bender into a full head-on collision. I mean, when I hit bottom, it was like cutting the cord of an elevator on the top floor. When I crashed hard. I moved to Las Vegas with a lot of money, and within 6 years I was homeless. And I never met a check that I didn't want to gamble away. I never met a strip club that I didn't want to go, you know, put my money in the G-string of a girl I would never see, except in my dreams. I never wanted to eat a buffet. I became bulimic. in my sickness. I was throwing up 3 or 4 times a day. I was eating just to throw up. Then I became a drug addict. All because alcohol, at some point alcohol won't be enough for you. It wasn't enough for me. It's not enough for many of us. We try everything else while we protect the supply. Because that's what's so tiring about our addiction, is protecting supply. Because if I asked you not to breathe, you would say, Robert, if I stop breathing, I'm going to die. For many of us, drinking is breath. But it's killing us. It's not giving us life. If it was giving you life, we wouldn't be here. We'd be somewhere else doing something else with somebody else. We wouldn't be here. But we have to do the steps. Again, when you come in here, your higher power can be anything. Just turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood Him. You know, the first 100 in the foreword to the first edition said, we are 100 average American. They said, we wrote this book, we recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body to show you how we have recovered is precisely why we wrote this book. We hope this book is so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. So why does it become necessary for us? When you can pick the God of your own understanding, no matter what walk of faith you come from, as long as your God, whoever your God is, and can be a her, I have a sponsee whose God is Gaius, some chick who performs some miracles. I don't know, but I know he's happy, joyous, and free. And I know he's sober 3 years. So who am I to argue, even though I have a different higher power? I was sober 7 years. 7 years before I figured out who God was to me in my life. 7 years. If you need to make the group your higher power, what greater example of power can you ever get than a group full of people who have overcome their urge to drink and to burn their life to the ground one more time? So do the steps. Help other people. Do everything that they told Billy to do when he first got here 41 years ago. And he's here every Friday night, reading his big book. Do everything that we tell you to do. And we're not going to tell you because we want to tell you something. We're going to tell you what we have done. And if you decide to do it, that's great. But if you don't, that's on you. You know, again, step 12 is we try to carry the message. It says on Roman numeral 17, sufficient to bring about permanent recovery. It says it is vital that one alcoholic works with another alcoholic. It doesn't say that the alcoholic has received the message. Again, at some point we all have to take responsibility. I can't concede for you any more than you could have conceded for me. I had to concede to my innermost self that I was alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery. If I don't do that, I'm never going to admit that I'm insane, let alone need a power greater than me to restore me to sanity. Which means I'm not going to be willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as we understood God. Which means I'm not likely going to take a moral and fearless inventory. Which likely means I'll have nothing to admit in step 5. I'll have no defects of character because you were wrong too. And I'll have no shortcomings because it wasn't always my fault. And rarely will people be on the list in step 8 because I need you to apologize to me before I apologize to you. And by that time, I'm drunk. And don't take my word for it. Take the word of people who've relapsed. I was telling a friend the other day, being sober is because we don't do something, which is drink. Being recovered is what we do. So it's no longer the absence, You know, this whole idea, when you're new, you can get away with, well, at least I didn't drink today. That wears off after a while. It's because of what we do, not because of what we don't do. And you can tell a person, if they're happy, if they're joyous and they're free. If your higher power causes you, is your power to not drink, and you're happy, joyous and free, then you're ready to experience the rest of the problems. And I'm going to read the rest of the promises to you, and I'm going to close. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled amongst us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always, you know what that word always means? Always.
Sometimes.
I figured that one out in my limited understanding of grammar. And always means it never doesn't occur. It always, but I have to work for it. And if I'm not willing to work for it, I shouldn't have any expectation that will stay, let alone last. So thank you for letting me share tonight.